Thank you. I remember the day I walked into the bank lobby. I met the banker, shook his hand. He led me back to his office, offered me a cup of coffee, sat down at the chair next to his desk. We exchanged a few pleasantries. Then he asked the question, "What can I do for you today?" I took a deep breath, and I said, "My wife and I want to open a restaurant, and we're here to see if you can help us." "Oh, really? That's great. Are you a chef?" "No." Are you managing a restaurant, or have you owned a place before?" "No." And puzzled, he says, "Oh, so are you fresh out of culinary school? What's your connection to the food business?" I said, "No, sir, no training, no education, just a long-standing dream." I could tell he was puzzled. I could tell he did not quite know what to do, but he was professional. And he said, "Well, you know how hard the restaurant business is, don't you?" And he went through his spiel about how many restaurants fail every year and how many restaurants they have foreclosed on recently. But he was polite and said, "Well, here's some things that we need from you. We'll need personal financial statement. We'll need past tax returns. We'll need some payroll stubs, and of course a business plan." And I agreed, said, "Oh, I can do that," shook his hand, and went on my way. Our relationship with the banker went on well over a year as we were in search for our location for our restaurant. Finally found the place that we thought this is going to be the place. We got a letter of intent from our realtor, and we took it back to the bank. Said, "I think we found our place." "Great." Took the letter, "I'll get back to you." And he never did. A day or two goes by. Wonder why I haven't heard. I call, leave a message, doesn't get returned. Finally, I reach him and I figure out why he was being so elusive. They were not going to extend me the loan. The bank said, "You're too big of a risk. Goodbye and good luck." And that news hit me like a ton of bricks, took the air out of me. What am I going to do? Spent a year now building this idea, finally getting to a place where I think we're ready to move forward. And now they're telling me no. What was I going to do? Maybe he was right. Maybe I am foolish. Maybe it's not real smart to do that. I don't have any experience. I've never owned my own business. Maybe he was right. Who am I to say that I could do this? All of this began flooding in. But then, what if he's wrong? What if the banker is wrong? What if I do have what it takes? And how do we say yes, innovators, when we reach that point? Because you'll reach that point. If you are truly an innovator, if you are an entrepreneur, you will face that wall someday. You have an idea, and everybody else around you says no, but you say yes to the idea. How do you know to do that? There are three things I want to point out. One, you've got to understand your strengths. That is, what is it that you do very well? Rewind 25 years prior, my first job out of college. I was a YMCA director. I was a physical director of all the physical programs we had going on. I oversaw the aquatics, the basketball, the aerobics programs and such. It was a great job, a lot of fun. It was in my major field. But about 2 months into it, I got kind of bored. Until I got an idea, and I ran it by my executive. And I said, Jim, you know, I'm an active runner in our community, but But there's no midwinter competition for runners. All the outlets for running competitively are spring, summer, and fall. What if we held a midwinter road race, sponsored it out at our YMCA, put it on the coldest day of the year, traditionally the coldest day, and let's see what happens. Great idea, he said. Go to work at it. To make a long story short, we had over a couple hundred runners that first year, and it turned into an annual affair after that. What I did not realize was happening, though, was my strengths were already beginning to emerge. And I would see this happen over and over again. I'd get an idea for a program or a conference or a recording project or an addition to my house. And I knew how to move that from an idea, nurture it, and bring it into a finished product. And at age 43, why could I not take an idea for a restaurant and do the same thing? It was just the biggest idea I had ever had. It required leadership and direction, and I did that all along. I think maybe I have the strength to do it. You have to be able to decipher your resume this way, not just according to formalities, but what's below your resume to what you're really capable of doing. Second thing you have to understand are your opportunities. Know what has made you who you are. People ask me, what'd you do before you were a chef? And, I was a college pastor for 18 years. Boy, that's a big change. I said, well, in your mind maybe, but in my mind, there's not a whole lot different between being a chef and being a pastor. Because in 18 years, I cooked a lot of meals for college kids at camps and retreats and in my house. I listened to a lot of stories, provided a lot of comfort, promoted a lot of joy. Because what I was doing, in essence, is what I still do today. I provide for a basic human need, and that need is hospitality. When I open my doors for you to come see me, I'm inviting you in for rest, for nourishment, and for enjoyment. I'm doing very much the same thing I'd always done. And I believe it was this that helped me create my restaurant. And it brings me to one of my favorite entrepreneurial success stories. That's of Bob Taylor. Bob Taylor is owner of Taylor Guitars in El Cajon, California. He makes high-quality guitars. He set out to make a great guitar 30 years ago, but there was only one problem. Bob was not an experienced guitar maker. He was just a young man with a dream. But Bob says to this day that was the very thing that helped him make a great guitar, because he was not bound by the preconceived ideas and notions of what is required to brace and design a guitar. Bob's lack of experience led to new innovation, led him to think about the guitar making process, and helped him succeed. See, and the banker looked at my lack of opportunity of being a chef or a restaurant owner as a negative. But really, I think it helped me as a positive. Your opportunities, you have to be able to understand what it is that's made you and look, again, beyond what you think you need to maybe really who you are. The last thing, and this is the most intangible to understand, and that's your perspective. Your perspective is simply what you see from your vantage point. When my children were little, I would take them to school in our neighborhood elementary school. The procedure was you would just kind of line your car up with everybody else's car, and you'd come up to the front of the school and you stop, let your kids out, and they would go on, and you would continue on out of the neighborhood. And this one morning, the cars were stopped, and I could see about 2 cars in front of me. There was a van, and there was a mom with the doors open, and she was helping her handicapped daughter out of the van, and her wheelchair was stuck. And I said, oh, that's too bad. We'll be patient here. And before I knew it, the idiot behind me starts honking. I put it into park, got out, went back to his truck and said, do you have any idea what you're honking at? Yeah, we need to move it on. I said, sir, if you saw what I saw, if you saw what I see up there, you'd shut your mouth because you'd see this mom helping her daughter in a wheelchair. Oh my God, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you should be sorry. Next time, don't jump to a conclusion without all the information. And I got back in my car, let my kids out at the right time, and drove off. He did not see what I saw, but he needed my perspective. He needed to see what I see. Because if he didn't, he'd still be back there making a lot of people mad. And innovators, your perspective is what people need. Because you see things differently than they do. They will need to see what you see. And the person that I learned this lesson most from was my father. I lived out on a 26-acre rural ranch or farm, and didn't have a lot of friends around my age. So I had to figure out how to entertain myself. And my dad, to help assist in that, bought me a little 80cc Yamaha motorcycle. And as a little boy, I would just ride all over that 26-acre property. And for some reason, though, I decided to include the front yard and the backyard in my trails. Now, as you can imagine, a motorcycle is not going to be too easy on grass. And that motorcycle, before long, ripped a nice little dirt trail around the front of the house, around the back house, and then out to the pasture. And I did not know this and learn about this until years later. My dad told me the story. He said one day a neighbor stopped by, out on the country road. He said, Jack, why you let your son ride through the yard like that? Why you let him tear up your yard like that? Why don't you make him stay out in the pasture? Some of you might be thinking, yeah, why did your dad do that? And what was your dad thinking? Dad gave an answer to the neighbor that's so profound, and I've told this story hundreds of times because this story has affected me, the way I raised my son. He told the neighbor, the grass will come back, but the boy won't. The grass will come back, but the boy won't. My dad saw something that the neighbor didn't see. My dad, his perspective, understood that it was not an eyesore. It was not a nuisance. It was a boy growing in his creativity and his imagination as he would ride around thinking he was chasing bad guys or being a world-class motorcycle rider. That's what my dad saw. And that's why my dad responded differently than the neighbor. And innovators, you too, you have a perspective that other people do not have, and it is very important that you know how to communicate that. You have strengths. You know what you're good at. You've had opportunities to shape you and mold you. And you have a perspective on life. You see things differently. Those things will add up to having impact. But those three things are not good enough just to understand. The final key you have to use to unlock those is belief. It's not just enough to understand, but you have to believe in your strengths and your opportunities and your perspective. Because it is belief that takes idea and moves it into action. You tell me your idea, I'll tell you what you believe by what you're doing about your idea. You can have all the good ideas you want, but until they are moved into action by belief, they'll sit on the shelf. It's really that simple. Now, don't get me wrong, simplicity doesn't mean easy. Simplicity simply means that your answer might be looking back at you in the mirror. Thanks for the opportunity.